I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse. The Godfather wasn't just a gangster movie. It was a cinematic miracle that nearly collapsed under the weight of studio warfare, production disasters, and enough behind-the-scenes chaos to rival any mob hit. What you saw on screen was movie magic. What happened behind the cameras, pure bedlam. Marlon Brando sabotaged his own screen test with shoe polish and tissue paper. Al Pacino almost lost his career-defining role. The horsehead scene traumatized actors who weren't warned it would be real. Studio executives tried to fire the director. And that cat in Brando's lap? A complete accident that created one of cinema's most memorable moments. These are 20 weird facts about The Godfather that reveal the brutal truth behind Hollywood's greatest masterpiece. Plus, we'll uncover the bonus fact that even the most obsessive fans don't know, something so shocking it changed how movies are made forever. Ready to go behind the scenes of cinema history? Let's break some cinematic omerta. Marlon Brando's audition was an act of creative rebellion. When Francis Ford Coppola suggested Marlon Brando for Don Vito Corleone, Paramount executives erupted. They viewed Brando as box office poison, a difficult, unpredictable actor whose recent films had bombed spectacularly. Studio chiefs declared him unemployable and threatened to cancel the entire project if Coppola insisted on casting him. But Coppola wasn't backing down. He arranged a secret screen test at Brando's Beverly Hills home, telling the actor to treat it like a casual makeup experiment. Brando showed up with shoe polish slicked through his hair to darken it and stuffed tissue paper into his cheeks. He wanted the character to look like a bulldog, not the matinee idol Hollywood expected. The transformation was startling. Gone was the magnetic Brando of A Streetcar Named Desire. In his place sat an aging patriarch whose very presence commanded respect and fear. When studio executives finally saw the test footage, their resistance crumbled. Brando had become Vito Corleone before their eyes, and they knew they were witnessing something extraordinary. The cotton ball myth that fooled Hollywood for decades. For 50 years, movie fans believed Marlon Brando stuffed cotton balls in his cheeks during filming to achieve Don Vito's distinctive bulldog appearance. The story became Hollywood legend, repeated in countless interviews and behind-the-scenes documentaries. But the truth? Brando did not stuff his cheeks with cotton balls during actual filming. The confusion stems from his audition, where he used tissue paper, not cotton, as a temporary experiment. Once cast, Brando worked with professional makeup artists to create dental prosthetics that achieved the same effect without the discomfort of foreign objects in his mouth. The prosthetics allowed him to speak clearly while maintaining the character's distinctive jawline and aged appearance. This myth persisted because it fit perfectly with Brando's reputation for method acting extremes. Fans wanted to believe their favorite actor went to such lengths for authenticity. The real story reveals something more impressive. Brando's creative instincts during that audition were so precise that professional effects teams needed sophisticated prosthetics to replicate what he achieved with simple tissue paper. Al Pacino nearly lost Michael Corleone after 2 weeks of filming. 2 weeks into production, Paramount executives made a devastating decision. Fire Al Pacino. The young, relatively unknown actor seemed lost in the role of Michael Corleone, delivering what studio chiefs considered a lifeless, mumbling performance. They couldn't see the quiet intensity Coppola was cultivating. They wanted immediate charisma and star power. The executives had already contacted their backup choice, Robert Redford. Contracts were being prepared for Redford to step in and reshoot all of Pacino's scenes. Coppola faced an impossible situation. He believed absolutely in Pacino's interpretation of Michael as a man slowly awakening to his family's darkness. But the studio controlled the purse strings. Salvation came in the form of the restaurant scene where Michael kills Sollozzo and Captain McCluskey. When studio executives saw Pacino's transformation, the cold precision, The calculated violence, the complete shift from reluctant son to ruthless killer, they immediately understood Coppola's vision. Pacino kept his role, and cinema history was preserved. That scene didn't just define Michael Corleone, it saved Al Pacino's career. The horse head was real, and it destroyed John Marley. The infamous horse head scene represents everything shocking about The Godfather's production. During rehearsals, Coppola used a fake horse head, but when cameras rolled, he replaced it with a real severed head without telling actor John Marley. The head came from a dog food factory, selected specifically for its pristine condition and dramatic impact. Marley's blood-curdling scream wasn't acting. It was genuine terror and revulsion. The actor had expected to wake up next to obvious movie makeup, not the authentic remains of a recently deceased animal. His reaction was so visceral that Coppola knew immediately he had captured something unforgettable. The single take was perfect because it couldn't be replicated. The psychological toll on Marley was severe. He reportedly had nightmares for weeks afterward and struggled to separate the character's trauma from his own experience. This incident became emblematic of Coppola's directing philosophy. Achieve authenticity through any means necessary. The horse head wasn't just a prop, it was a weapon of cinematic warfare that left lasting scars on everyone involved. Coppola's job, hung by a thread through entire production. Francis Ford Coppola lived under constant threat of termination throughout The Godfather's production. Studio executives questioned every creative decision, from his casting choices to his insistence on period authenticity. They wanted a contemporary gangster film with more action and less character development. Coppola envisioned an epic family saga that happened to involve crime. The tension reached breaking points multiple times. After particularly difficult shooting days, Coppola would return to his hotel expecting pink slips or replacement directors. The atmosphere was so toxic that cast members described the production as nightmarish. Every scene became a battleground between artistic vision and commercial demands. Producer Albert Ruddy often found himself mediating between Coppola's perfectionism and studio impatience. The dailies, raw footage from each day's shooting, were scrutinized by executives looking for reasons to justify firing the director. Ironically, this pressure created some of the film's most memorable moments. Coppola directed like his life depended on it, because professionally it did. The constant threat of failure pushed everyone to deliver performances they might never have achieved in comfortable circumstances. James Caan broke his own ribs for Sonny's death scene. James Caan's commitment to playing Sonny Corleone nearly killed him during the toll booth assassination sequence. Determined to make the machine gun attack look brutally realistic, Caan insisted on being attached to explosive squibs, small charges that simulate gunshot impacts. The special effects team warned him about the dangers, but Caan refused to use a stunt double for the close-up shots. When the explosives detonated, they were more powerful than anticipated. The force of multiple squibs firing simultaneously cracked two of Caan's ribs and left him gasping for breath between takes. He later admitted the pain was excruciating, but he continued filming because he knew the authenticity of his reaction would elevate the scene's impact. The toll booth sequence required 12 different camera angles and multiple takes for each setup. Caan endured this punishment repeatedly, each explosion taking a physical toll. His commitment paid off. Sonny's death remains one of cinema's most shocking and visceral assassination scenes, but the price was Caan's body, battered and broken in service of Coppola's uncompromising vision. The wedding scene nearly bankrupted the production. The opening wedding sequence, seemingly a joyous celebration, became a logistical nightmare that almost destroyed the film's budget before production truly began. Coppola insisted on shooting at an actual Long Island estate, with hundreds of extras, authentic Italian food, and period-perfect details down to the smallest prop. The catering costs alone spiraled out of control. Extras were fed genuine Italian cuisine prepared by professional chefs, not the typical craft services food. Musicians were hired to play traditional Italian songs, not just background actors pretending to perform. Every detail had to be absolutely authentic, from the fabric of the women's dresses to the type of wine served at tables. Weather complications extended the shoot from 3 planned days to nearly 2 weeks. Each additional day meant housing, feeding, and paying hundreds of people while dealing with temperamental equipment and challenging outdoor lighting. By the time cameras wrapped on the wedding, the production had consumed nearly a quarter of its total budget. Studio executives were furious, but audiences would later cite the wedding's authentic atmosphere as proof of the film's exceptional quality. Robert Duvall almost quit over his character's heritage. Robert Duvall nearly walked away from The Godfather over a creative disagreement that revealed the depth of thought behind every character detail. Mario Puzo's novel described Tom Hagen as having Italian heritage, but Coppola envisioned him as an Irish-German outsider adopted into the Corleone family. This change wasn't arbitrary. It reflected the complex ethnic dynamics of organized crime families. Duvall initially resisted playing what he saw as a token white guy in an otherwise authentically Italian cast. He worried the character would seem like a studio compromise, diluting the film's cultural authenticity for mainstream appeal. Long discussions with Coppola finally convinced him that Tom's outsider status was essential to the family's power structure. The decision proved brilliant. Tom's ethnic difference made him the perfect consigliere, trusted by the family, but never truly part of their blood bonds. His loyalty was chosen, not inherited, which gave weight to every scene where he advises or represents the Corleones. Duvall's performance captured this delicate balance between insider knowledge and perpetual outsider status, creating one of cinema's most complex supporting characters. Marlon Brando sabotaged his own scenes with elaborate pranks. Marlon Brando's pranks during filming became legendary among the cast and crew, including putting weights under his body during a scene where he's carried upstairs, making it nearly impossible for the actors to lift him. But his practical jokes served a deeper purpose than simple entertainment. They kept the atmosphere loose during intensely dramatic scenes. Between takes of the most serious moments, Brando would improvise completely inappropriate dialogue or make faces at other actors to break tension. During one particularly emotional scene, he secretly taped silly sayings under his co-stars' lines on cue cards, causing them to break character when they glimpsed his additions. These moments of levity prevented the dark subject matter from overwhelming the cast. His most elaborate prank involved convincing newer cast members that he had psychic powers. He would predict seemingly impossible things about their personal lives, which he had actually learned by bribing crew members for information. The joke lasted weeks and created a mystical aura around Brando that enhanced his authority as Don Corleone. Even his pranks became method acting, reinforcing his character's mysterious power over others. The cat in Brando's lap was a complete accident that created cinema. History. The cat purring contentedly in Don Vito's lap during the opening scene was never in the script. It was a stray that wandered onto the Paramount lot and caught Brando's attention. Coppola was setting up the first scene when Brando spotted the animal and decided to incorporate it into his performance without telling anyone. The cat's presence created an immediate contradiction that defined Vito Corleone's character, a man capable of ordering brutal violence while gently stroking a defenseless animal. This duality became central to the entire Godfather saga, the contrast between family tenderness and criminal ruthlessness. What seemed like a random moment was actually the perfect metaphor for the film's themes. Go ahead and like and subscribe, because what happened next shows how accidents can create art. The cat began purring so loudly during takes that it interfered with the dialogue recording. Sound engineers had to work overtime during post-production to separate Brando's lines from the feline soundtrack, but nobody suggested removing the cat because everyone recognized they had captured something magical, a spontaneous moment that revealed more about Don Corleone than pages of exposition could accomplish. Studio executives demanded a modern setting and more violence. Paramount's original vision for The Godfather resembled a low-budget crime thriller more than the epic masterpiece audiences eventually received. Studio executives wanted Puzo to rewrite his script with a modern setting instead of the 1940s period details, and they demanded more shootout sequences to create a typical gangster film. They envisioned car chases, machine gun battles, and contemporary urban settings. Coppola fought these changes with religious fervor. He understood that the period setting was essential to the story's themes about family, tradition, and the changing nature of American crime. A modern setting would eliminate the immigrant experience that drove the characters' motivations and reduce the story to simple good versus evil violence. The compromise nearly destroyed the film before production began. Studio executives allocated a tiny budget, assuming they were making a quick exploitation film. When Coppola insisted on period accuracy, costume design, authentic locations, and elaborate set pieces, the money ran out repeatedly. Each creative victory came at the cost of constant budget negotiations and threats of production shutdown. The Italian-American Civil Rights League almost stopped production. Real mobsters and Italian-American activists united to prevent The Godfather from reaching theaters, creating a bizarre situation where life imitated art. The Italian-American Civil Rights League, an organization formed to combat stereotypes, met with producers to express their concerns about the film's portrayal of their community. But behind this legitimate organization lurked actual organized crime figures who had their own reasons for opposing the film. Joseph Colombo, head of one of New York's 5 crime families, led protests against the production. His motivations weren't entirely cultural. He worried that a realistic portrayal of organized crime would increase law enforcement attention and public scrutiny. The protests attracted thousands of people and garnered national media coverage, turning the film into a political flashpoint before anyone had seen a single scene. The resolution required delicate negotiation. Producers agreed to remove specific terms like mafia and cosa nostra from the dialogue, while the League agreed to allow filming to proceed. This compromise actually improved the script. Euphemisms and coded language made the characters seem more authentic and dangerous. Real criminals had inadvertently helped create more realistic criminal characters. Richard Castellano almost destroyed his career over a hairpiece. Richard Castellano, cast as Pete Clemenza, nearly lost his role in cinema history over his absolute refusal to wear a hairpiece. The veteran character actor arrived on set with a distinctly 1970s hairstyle that completely destroyed the film's 1940s authenticity. Costume designers presented him with a perfectly crafted toupee that would match the period, but Castellano rejected it outright. His vanity created a production crisis. Scenes couldn't be shot until the hair issue was resolved, but Castellano threatened to quit rather than wear what he considered an embarrassing fake hairpiece. Other actors and crew members watched the standoff with fascination and horror. How could someone risk their career over something so seemingly minor? Coppola eventually found a compromise by having the hair department create a piece so natural-looking that Castellano felt comfortable wearing it. But the incident revealed the psychological pressures actors faced in creating these iconic characters. Everyone understood they were making something special, which made every detail feel monumentally important. Castellano's hair became a metaphor for the perfectionism that elevated The Godfather above typical Hollywood entertainment. The restaurant murder scene required 77 takes. The restaurant assassination sequence where Michael kills Sollozzo and Captain McCluskey pushed Al Pacino to his psychological limits and required more takes than any other scene in the film. Coppola demanded absolute perfection. The moment represented Michael's transformation from war hero to cold-blooded killer, and every gesture needed to communicate this character evolution. Pacino struggled with the scene's emotional complexity. He had to portray nervous fear, calculated determination, and instant regret within minutes of screen time. The physical choreography was equally challenging, retrieving the planted gun, shooting two men at close range, and walking away calmly while his ears ring from gunfire. Each element had to appear simultaneously spontaneous and methodical. The multiple takes devastated everyone involved. Pacino questioned his acting abilities with each unsuccessful attempt. Sterling Hayden and Al Lettieri, playing the murder victims, endured dozens of deaths while maintaining their characters' unsuspecting attitudes. The crew watched the same violent choreography repeated until it became surreal. But when Coppola finally called cut on the perfect take, everyone knew they had captured one of cinema's greatest moments of character transformation. Diane Keaton's Kay was originally Italian-American. Diane Keaton's character underwent a fundamental change that reflected the broader themes of assimilation and cultural conflict in The Godfather. Mario Puzo's original novel described Kay Adams as Italian-American, making her romance with Michael a union between families of similar backgrounds. But Coppola recognized that an Anglo-Saxon Protestant Kay would better represent the cultural tensions driving the story. This ethnic change transformed Kay from an insider who understood Michael's world into an outsider struggling to comprehend the violence surrounding her new family. Her horrified reactions to Corleone family business became the audience's emotional entry point. She represented mainstream American values confronting immigrant criminal traditions. Keaton embraced this cultural divide in her performance, playing Kay as perpetually slightly confused by the family's coded conversations and mysterious loyalties. Her wedding dress, distinctly American in style, contrasted sharply with the traditional Italian elements of the ceremony. This visual metaphor reinforced the theme of two cultures colliding through marriage, creating conflicts that would drive the entire trilogy. James Caan improvised the toll booth approach. James Caan's final scene, Sonny's violent death at the toll booth, featured one of the film's most crucial improvisational moments. As scripted, Sonny was supposed to approach the toll booth calmly before the ambush began, but Caan felt this approach contradicted everything he had established about the character's impulsive, hot-headed nature. Without informing Coppola or the other actors, Caan decided to play Sonny as suspicious and agitated even before seeing the assassins. He threw change at the toll collector with visible frustration and kept his engine running as if sensing danger. This improvisation made the subsequent attack feel more inevitable. Sonny's violent life had finally caught up with his violent personality. The change required the toll booth operator, a non-actor hired for authenticity, to react naturally to Caan's unexpected aggression. His genuine confusion and slight fear enhanced the scene's realism. Caan's improvisation turned a simple assassination into a character study. Sonny's death became the logical conclusion of his inability to control his temper, even in moments requiring caution. The baptism montage almost didn't happen. The baptism sequence, where Michael's renunciation of Satan is intercut with his orchestrated murders of rival family heads, nearly ended up on the cutting room floor. Studio executives couldn't understand the connection between the religious ceremony and the simultaneous assassinations. They viewed it as pretentious, art house nonsense that would confuse mainstream audiences. Coppola fought desperately to preserve what he considered the film's spiritual and thematic climax. The sequence represented everything The Godfather was trying to say about the contradiction between religious faith and criminal behavior, between family love and deadly betrayal. Without this montage, Michael's transformation would lack its final damning irony. The editing process was incredibly complex. Coppola and his team had to match the rhythm of the Latin baptismal responses with the violent climaxes of each assassination. Every cut had to feel inevitable. The religious words triggering each murder, the sacred and profane becoming inseparably linked. When test audiences saw the finished sequence, their reaction was stunned, silence followed by overwhelming appreciation. The studio executives finally understood they had witnessed cinematic poetry. Sterling Hayden's police captain was based on real corruption. Sterling Hayden's Captain McCluskey represented something darker than typical movie corruption. He was based on documented cases of police officers working directly for organized crime families. Research for the film uncovered extensive evidence of law enforcement officials who received regular payments for protecting criminal operations and eliminating inconvenient investigations. Hayden brought personal authority to the role through his own complicated relationship with institutional power. As a former Marine and merchant sailor who had later named names during the Hollywood blacklist era, he understood both loyalty and betrayal from personal experience. His performance suggested a man who had compromised his ideals so gradually that he no longer recognized his own moral collapse. The character's death at Michael's hands represented more than eliminating a corrupt cop. It symbolized the complete breakdown of legitimate authority in the face of organized crime's influence. When McCluskey dies, the audience realizes that no institution is safe from the Corleone family's reach. Hayden's portrayal made this corruption feel tragically inevitable rather than sensationally evil. The original cut was 4 hours long. After filming ended on August 7th, post-production efforts focused on trimming the film to manageable length, with producers and director continuously adding and removing scenes from the final product. Coppola's original assembly cut ran nearly 4 hours, forcing him to make heartbreaking decisions about which masterfully crafted scenes to sacrifice. Lost sequences included extended character development for Tom Hagen, additional scenes showing Vito's rise to power, and more detailed explanations of the five families' power structure. Each deleted scene was individually excellent, but the cumulative effect would have overwhelmed audiences and tested theater owners' patience with extended running times. The editing process became an exercise in creative murder. Coppola had to eliminate entire subplots and character arcs that had taken weeks to film and months to develop. Some of the most painful cuts involved Marlon Brando's performance, scenes showing Vito's wisdom and vulnerability that would have deepened audiences' understanding of his character. The theatrical version we know represents only the essential skeleton of Coppola's complete vision. The Academy almost rejected the film's Best Picture nomination. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences initially questioned whether The Godfather qualified for Best Picture consideration due to its subject matter and cultural impact. Some Academy members worried that honoring a film about organized crime would send the wrong message about Hollywood's values. They feared public backlash from moral guardians and political figures who had already criticized the film's sympathetic portrayal of criminals. Behind-the-scenes lobbying was intense. Supporters argued that The Godfather transcended its criminal subject matter to become a profound meditation on family, power, and the American dream's dark side. Opponents countered that no technical excellence could justify glorifying violence and lawlessness. The controversy reflected broader cultural tensions about art's responsibility to society. The Academy's eventual decision to nominate and award The Godfather Best Picture represented a watershed moment in Hollywood's relationship with controversial subject matter. The film's victory proved that audiences could distinguish between depicting violence and endorsing it, paving the way for more complex moral storytelling in American cinema. Bonus fact: Francis Ford Coppola wore a t-shirt reading Paranoia. Throughout production, The most revealing detail about The Godfather's production wasn't visible to audiences, but was worn daily by its director. Francis Ford Coppola had a custom t-shirt made with paranoia printed across the chest, and he wore it under his clothes during filming. This wasn't a fashion statement, it was a psychological armor against the constant threats to his career and creative vision. The paranoia was entirely justified. Studio executives were actively plotting to replace him, producers questioned his every decision, and even some cast members doubted his ability to handle such an ambitious project. Coppola's t-shirt became a daily reminder that everyone was watching, waiting for him to fail. But rather than destroying his confidence, this pressure transformed him into the uncompromising perfectionist who created a masterpiece. Years later, Coppola revealed that wearing the shirt helped him channel his anxiety into creative fuel. Every time he felt overwhelmed by studio politics or production disasters, he would touch the shirt under his clothes and remember that his paranoia was keeping him sharp. The greatest gangster film ever made was directed by a man who understood that in Hollywood, just like in organized crime, you're never truly safe from betrayal. The Godfather emerged from chaos to become cinema's definitive statement about power, family, and the corruption of the American dream. What appeared effortless on screen was actually forged through studio warfare, production disasters, and creative battles that nearly destroyed everyone involved. The film's enduring power comes not just from its performances and direction, but from the very real stakes that every participant faced during its creation. So the next time you watch Vito Corleone make someone an offer they can't refuse, remember the production that almost refused to exist. Drop a comment with your favorite Godfather moment, hit that subscribe button, and keep watching, because in Hollywood, just like in the Corleone family, there's always more than meets the eye.